Welcome back, engineers. In the previous video, we got some theoretical understanding about different network protocols. We saw transport layer protocols, we saw application layer protocols, and we tried to understand those differences, right? So in this video, let's try to do a quick demo about the transport layer protocols, the TCP, UDP, and the QUIC. I hope you're ready. Let's get started. So this demo is going to be really simple. We're going to create a Python server for TCP and a client in Python as well for TCP, right? And we're going to send messages between these two, and we're going to use a tool called Wireshark for doing packet sniffing. So basically, Wireshark is a tool for network protocol analysis. We're going to see what happens when we actually send a message between these two, right? So we're going to do the same thing with a UDP server client and also with a QUIC server client. Okay, so we'll get started with TCP first. So let's go to VS Code. I'm going to show you the demo. So this code is already available on GitHub. Definitely check it out. So there are pairs of files. For QUIC, there's a client and server. For TCP, there's a client and server. And UDP, there's a client and server, right? And the instructions to follow this tutorial are in the README file. So definitely give it a try. Okay. So let's spin up the TCP server first. So for this, we are going to use the socket library in Python, and we're just going to start the server. Now TCP server is listening on port 6000. So we're going to go to Wireshark now, and we're going to start inspecting this packet or start waiting for these packets, right? So for this, Wireshark provides different methods to inspect. We are interested in localhost where we'll run our scripts. So we're going to go into the loopback, and I've added the filter TCP port for port 6000. Okay. Now Wireshark is listening for this port for any packets to come in. Now we will go to the client, and the client code is again really simple. It is connecting to the local host at port 6000, and it is sending 10 messages. Okay, so let's see what happens now. So the client has started sending messages. Let's wait for it to finish. Okay, so there are a total of 9 messages sent, and if we go into Wireshark, we can see lots of entries here, right? So all these are messages coming from our client, which is on port 49601, to our server, which is on 6000, right? So to better understand this, let's clear all this and just send one message and see what happens in the cycle of just one message. Okay. So I'm just going to send one message. Right, one message sent and received. So let's analyze this. So for sending just one message, so much has happened on Wireshark, right? So if you look at it from top to bottom, first there is a SYN packet, which is establishing a handshake between client to server 49608 to 6000, and the server is acknowledging that, okay, I'm ready to do a handshake, and the client has acknowledged the handshake. So just to make a handshake, there are 3 steps involved. This is called the 3-way handshake. After that, we start sending the message. So we can see here TCP message 1 is part of the message, and we are using push command to send it. And from the server, it acknowledges it, and server acknowledges the push, and then the client does the same, another acknowledgement. Finally, the client has completed sending everything, so it has initiated the finish handshake, and server acknowledges the handshake, server finishes the handshake, and client acknowledges the finish, right? So there are almost 12 steps involved to send just one message in TCP, and this is one of the reasons why it's a bit slow. But the pros of TCP is there is always a proper handshake involved. If there are any network issues, it's going to retry, it's going to send the packets in the same order as expected, and so on, right? So this is how TCP works. Now let's try to check the same thing with UDP. So let's close all this. Now let's start the UDP server. Again, UDP is running on port 6002. It is using the socket library again with SOCDgram, which is the protocol for using UDP, right? So let's spin up this server. Now UDP server is listening on port 6002. Let's change our Wireshark listener to UDP. So we can change the filter like this. just say UDP port equal to 6002. Now it is ready to listen on UDP port 6002. Now let's send the message from our client. So again, client code is simple. We are connecting to this host and port and we are sending a message, right? So let's send it. So I have sent just one message, sent and received. So if you inspect Wireshark, there are just two steps. One is going from client to server and the server acknowledging the message. That's it. There is no handshake involved, and there are no other steps about finishing the handshake or terminating the handshake or anything like that. Just send it and forget it, right? So we can also see the message here, UDP message 1, right? So this is how UDP works. So imagine if we were to send like 1,000 messages, the order is not guaranteed in UDP. So if I'm running this in localhost, maybe we will see a proper sequencing of order, but imagine it in a network scenario with lots of computers, the order may be lost or reordered depending on the network traffic and so on, right? So this is how UDP works. Now let's try to see QUIC. So let's close this. So QUIC, like we discussed in the previous video, that it has encryption built in. So we are supposed to give it a certificate and a key file. So to generate these files, a script is already provided. So if you're running it in your local machine, just run the script once, which will generate these two files, key and cert, and then we can start the server. Okay, now QUIC server is listening on localhost 4433. So as we discussed in the previous video, QUIC works on UDP protocol. It is having the best features of both TCP and UDP, right? Now let's go to Wireshark and wait for QUIC setup. So for this, we're going to do QUIC and on port UDP port 4433, right? Now let's send a message and see what happens. Again, QUIC client code is connecting to localhost 4433 and it is trying to send this message, hello from QUIC client, and the rest is just a protocol. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so we sent one message, QUIC client, hello, sent and received. So if we go to Wireshark, so now we can see the best of two worlds, right? So in this we can see that there is a handshake involved, and it is not that three-way detailed handshake. It is a quick handshake between client and server. So those are these messages for handshake, and then we are sending the payload. So this is a protected payload because we are using encryption built in. That is why we have given those secret files and everything, and it is a built-in protocol for QUIC. And if you want to inspect this message, you all will see is gibberish, right? So this is another advantage of using QUIC, that we are not able to see the message or inspect the message via man in the middle. So this Wireshark is like the man in the middle, right? Nobody has sent any message directly to Wireshark. It is sniffing the packets that is going over the network and trying to get information from there. So when we saw the demo about TCP and UDP, we were able to actually see the message 1, message 2, and so on. But in the case of QUIC, we won't be able to see that. Of course, we can do some decryption by providing the TLS files necessary for this, but that is a story for another video. Okay, so this is how we can send messages from QUIC server to client. So for QUIC server, we have used the library asyncio. So this is the supported library in Python for doing HTTP3 and QUIC. So definitely check out the documentation. I will leave some links in the description below for you to check out all these libraries, and the README file will help you run through this, right? So this was a quick demo about how different protocols work, how they can be inspected, and what are the details that we can see from them, right? And you can definitely go deeper into this and inspect all the data that is being provided by Wireshark. And if you don't want to do a local demo, you want to actually see the live details about, let's say, google.com, you can just close all this and you can go here. You can switch to Wi-Fi, and now we are waiting for, let's say, QUIC. Okay, we don't know what port they'll be running, so we'll just wait for QUIC and just open up Firefox and go to google.com. Okay, wow, so we can see lots of packets that are being sent by QUIC, right? we can inspect all this. So there's a detailed handshake, we don't know what messages are being sent. So we can go through all these details, right? So something to play around with and try to understand all this. And if you also want to inspect and check, you can see that you can go to the network tab and just refresh it and see what happens, right? So you should see here there's a column for protocol, and wherever you're seeing HTTP 3, we can be sure that it is using QUIC internally, right? So these are the packets basically that we saw here, and that's how it works. So this is how you can inspect any website and see the protocol that is being used for multiple requests. And if you don't see this column, just right click on this and enable the protocol column and you should be able to see it, right? So that's all I had for this video, guys. This was a quick demo about TCP versus UDP versus QUIC. If you have any questions, definitely let me know. So play around with this tool Wireshark and give it a spin. So the code is available on GitHub. Definitely check it out. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video where we will look into HTTP 1 versus 2 versus 3 and HTTPS. So stay tuned for that. Do leave a like if you found this helpful. Do subscribe if you haven't done already so that you don't miss out on future videos. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Cheers.